Bitcoin continues conquering Japan. Bitpoint, Japanese payment gateway, will not take Bitcoin payments to thousands of domestic retailers. Besides, several cooperation arrangements are currently under negotiation. Bloomberg, quoting President Genki Oda, reports that going through a company providing payment terminal services to shops is easier than taking a lot of individual retailers. This is another one step to integrate Bitcoin as a payment option for the mass customer market.
Hello everybody, it's Max with Crypto Talk Now. For the longest time now, we have been stating that Jasmy is the Bitcoin in Japan. But where does that story originate from? And of course, people have been asking that. So if anything, let's jump into why Jasmy is truly the Bitcoin of Japan. Here we go. So this comes from this particular site referred to as Note. And I've gone ahead and blown this up, but the origin story started on March 17th of 2022, basically speaking. It probably started even before that, but as far as it like really being solidified or going mainstream with that expression, this is where it starts off from. Now, Bitpoint, as we know, the CEO, Genki Oda, he, in the past, even long before Jasmy, had gotten BTC, as in Bitcoin, available to the masses in Japan. And I want you guys to pay attention to why that is so crucial. And we'll show you some examples here later on into the video outline. Now, jumping into this comes from the man himself, Genki Oda, and it says, "This is Genki Oda, a founder and CEO of Bitpoint. He was invited to speak at the 23rd Japan International Financial System Forum back in 2022, held on March 17th of 2022. And on the topic, look at this quote: the near future of Web3 achieved with blockchain. This time, he participated in the panel discussion together with Mr. Kazumasu Sato, president of Jasmy Corporation, the project parent company of the crypto asset Jasmy, which was listed on Bitpoint last October." You gotta keep in mind this was October 2021. The Japan International Financial System Forum is an annual forum mainly for financial institutions. So think about that for a second. Recently, within the last month or so, we understood that Jasmy attended a few different blockchain conferences, but one specifically in Tokyo, where it was exclusive to what? The institutions, right? So it says, and since the participants are mainly from financial institutions, the sessions are very professional and of high quality. He had the opportunity to speak at this forum in 2019, and at that time, companies related to crypto assets were very rare, but this time there were many sessions related to crypto assets and blockchain, including a session by Mr. Chino of Kraken Japan. And I know some of you guys still, for instance, buy and trade on Kraken. You understand that, Kraken was subject to the SEC along with many others not that long ago. And it says, in a session on security tokens. So the times are, of course, definitely changing. They definitely are. But let's jump more into, like it shows here, the context. So he says he spoke at this session on the theme of the near future of Web3 realized with blockchain. And we also got to understand that when it comes to some of these concepts of Society 5.0, it's embracing these concepts of Web3. So he says, among the individual feedback that he received, many people were surprised, of course, to hear about the efforts of Jasmy. And one of the key things I want you guys to have from this outline is how many times, numerous times, that CEO Genki Oda specifically mentions by name Jasmy. So, it says it was introduced in this panel discussion. And of course, it gives you a little background of who he was and so on. But my key thing was not just how he was a successful entrepreneur, but some of these, like, for instance, medals he received. 2018, received the medal with dark blue ribbon. I guess that's like a big thing in Japan. I got to take more of a deep dive into that, but you can if you want. 2019, appointed as young global leaders by the World Economic Forum. And this is a key area that I want you to pay attention to. So in regards to the World Economic Forum, appointed as one of the young leaders. Well, the key thing is this. We understand that with data-free flow with trust, that was originally introduced from Japan by the late, great Shinzo Abe, former Prime Minister of Japan, to the World Economic Forum back in 2019. Now enter in this guy who was appointed as the young global leader by the World Economic Forum. So what do we have in regards to this? When we talk about DFFT, some people have criticized me and said, Max, why do you do some of this? This is not directly Jasmine related. It is. And here is, again, a little bit more of the proof of why it is directly Jasmine related, because, for instance, this guy and his connections. We're going to get into some of his key connections and why you should pay attention to that. It's all going to make sense of why, for instance, Jasmy is labeled as the Bitcoin of Japan. So, like he says, let him briefly introduce himself and BitPoint. He started his own business when he was a student in 2001, and since then has been active in supporting entrepreneurs, managers, investors, and even social entrepreneurs. He's currently the president of Remix Point, a publicly traded Japanese company, and founded BitPoint as a wholly owned subsidiary in 2016. He's been around for a while. Very active in crypto, blockchain, you name it, especially when it comes to, this exchange, where he's also the president of BitPoint. And last I checked, I haven't been able to take more of a deeper insight into this, but from my understanding, BitPoint is exclusive to Japan. It might be also other Asian regions and so on, but you got to keep in mind they definitely stand out as being like an exclusive exchange to Japan. So he received this medal with dark blue ribbon in 2018. It was selected to be, of course, like I mentioned, a global leader by the World Economic Forum. Now, here's an introduction to BitPoint, and here's what's crucial. So, BitPoint, Japan Crypto Asset Business Association. He's the director of Japan Crypto Asset Business Association. I know I just said that twice. Top of that, JVCEA, Japan Virtual and Crypto Assets Exchange Association. He's the vice chairman director of that. Financial Services Agency, licensed cryptocurrency exchange, Kanto Local Finance Bureau number *9. Okay. As you get more into this, it says in the crypto asset industry, he's a board member, like those things we mentioned, and it's accredited self-regulatory organization. So this guy is not only just part of this, but he's the president and he's a board member of that, right? Self-regulatory, that sounds big. When we talk about DFFT, understand, that regulatory framework to, bring this towards the regulatory bodies of the world and so on to get the clarity, right? On top of that, BitPoint is registered as a crypto asset exchange business by the Financial Services Agency back in 2017. BitPoint's philosophy is making tomorrow be better. Think about that for a moment. Based on this philosophy, BitPoint is taking on a variety of new challenges, like it says. And here is the juicy stuff, right? Of, confirming why Jasmy is the Bitcoin of Japan. Here's literally the proof. Because they were the first in Japan. And, some people don't understand that concept. Yes, real Bitcoin doesn't have, for instance, smart contracts and stuff like that, right? BTC. But since this was the first cryptocurrency in Japan, that's why they call it the Bitcoin of Japan. So here's the origins of that. They, of course, listed Jasmy on October 26, 2021. And it says some of the challenges in regards to this was that BitPoint listed Jasmy back down on that date. And it's the mother company of the project, which is Jasmy Co. It gives you a breakdown of what Jasmy is. It says by protecting data, individuals inherently entitled to or building a decentralized democratic world. We know this, right? But it gives you an example about, for instance, Smart Guardian, SKC, Secure Knowledge Communicator. And he says, in a nutshell, what Jasmy seeks to achieve is the democratization of data. And originally, the rights of personal information, you name it, right? But I like how he mentions some of these key things that we should all pay attention to. So he says there are now very strict rules regarding the attribution of personal information, especially in Europe and in the United States. Now, on the last deep dive, you saw where I gave you some examples from the American perspective, right? Literally 2 days ago, there's DFFT update. Well, we understand that, I guess you could say, moving forward, even though the SEC doesn't agree with it, the United States is part of that mix. So on top of that, what about, for instance, in Europe? So it says, under such circumstances, Jasmy is a blockchain in which the ownership of information belongs to the individual. The necessary information to disclose. Again, we know about some of this stuff, but my key takeaway is The reason why we show you guys some of these deep dives, like that lady from the European Union, right, Margaret, don't recall the last name off the top of my head, but she's a key player. I think it's Versacher. She's a key player when it comes to that framework from the European point of view. And you also see, for instance, like it says, the United States. So even though it doesn't seem like the U.S. is on board, maybe they just want to get to the point where we have to have that framework to get the clarity. This guy is well connected. All right, so let's get more into this. So, it states here on this example, and that basically is the necessary information to be disclosed to a necessary party when the individual approves, and the revenue obtained through the information disclosure belongs directly to the individual. Again, the whole concept of PDL. But he says, how is such a thing possible? Many people think that this is a very serious matter, but Jasmy has members who are seriously working on this. And of course, he outlines some of the key players that we know about. But why go out of the way to showcase some of this? Well, because he's a key partner through BitPoint with Jasmy. All right. And when we get more into this outline, you're going to see some examples. I'm going to give you some concepts that's going to pound home that much more of why we should pay all attention to this and so on. He breaks down about who Mr. Ondo is, also is Sato, Mr. Sato. He shows you examples of companies that have introduced Jasmy, for instance. But in regards to this, he states that many companies have already begun to adopt Jasmy's approach. And on top of it, it says Nippon Travel Agency and VAIO share the concept of data democratization and have begun to develop services that utilize personal information securely using Jasmy's blockchain. But when you get more into this, he'll even mention on top of this about how he specifically used, like, for instance, the hotels, introducing a payment form of Bitcoin, BTC, to get that done. What about having, for instance, Jasmy's personal data locker for you can secure your data into your own locker, right? So look at what it mentions here, all right? So he says, in a situation, there are projects that did not bend their convictions and work foolishly to realize their projects. He believes that Jasmy is one such company that didn't bend or, do foolish things. When a crypto asset exchange company like his decides to deal in crypto, it is required to examine each and every one of them. Just kind of like for the same reason that, I believe personally, like crypto.com really well vets projects, right? So this guy, especially when it comes to Japan, he's got his, life on the line or his reputation on the line. And you got to keep in mind, in Japan, they have an honor system. It's all about honor. They always pound that home. Why would we go out of the way to specifically get involved with Jasmy? So there's more examples here, obviously. But I want to point out just another few key things here about when he talks about like Web 3.0. But I like what is mentioned also here, and that is, he points out some of the things from the slide. I'm not going to get into the slide, but he states there's several points that he thinks that, the most important ones is low false. I'm not even pronounce that right now. Sorry, of data. Defalsified data, I guess you could say. Ownership of information belongs to the individual, and the creation of digitally oriented servers because they are automatically executed by programs. You have more of these examples, but one of the key things I want you guys to understand is, where it says this right here. It says, in the past, credit screening by financial institutions was mainly based on balance sheets. True, right? The old system. Why are we using that old system? We should go to the new 3.0 system of Web 3. So it says, and profit loss statements, PL, but in the future, credit screening based on cash flow may become a reality. So he gives you an example. He says, this scheme is established to automatically refund a portion of the money received from customers in the form of digital assets through a program of financial services based entirely on cash flow that could be realized. How so? Let's face it, the metaverse. So you understand that Jasmy is going to have a position when it comes to all this in the metaverse. And the way I look at it is, the concept of a personal data locker is going to be very, very significant in just that, the metaverse. Like if you're a gamer, for instance, and you have a favorite video game and you buy a bunch of downloadable content for that game, you don't want nobody being able to have access to that and so on, right? You don't want to have anybody have access to your own personal stats and achievements and so on. That's your own technically personal data. Yes, there's an administrator that oversees to make sure like nobody's messing with that and so on. But I imagine the same concept with the metaverse and so on. So you would need something to store that precious data, if you will. And again, that's the utility being used here. In the metaverse, this makes sense to have personal data lockers. So let's jump into a little bit more of what we have here in regards to all this. So, at the end of the day, it's kind of like exchanges and so on. They need to properly well vet projects. This has been well vetted a while ago. Okay, even though we've seen the price of Jasmine, let's face it, like Futters, point out it's been down about 90% or more, 99%. Like why in the world would you want to get into that? Okay, lots of projects are down 99% and so on. You can even argue that about, for instance, XRP, Ripple's XRP and so on. Am I going to get out of XRP because it's been down over 90+%? No. Among other projects that I believe full-heartedly in, because I realize that, which ones are building or have built in a bear market. You can name quite a few, QNT, XDC, Jasmy, XRP, Stellar XLM, HBAR, Casper, Algorand, you name it. So it says, specific server authenticated, user authenticated. I mean, he gives you examples, but he says the theme of today's panel was Web3. And that should also be part of a little bit of our theme other than just, Jasmy, the Bitcoin in Japan, where's the confirmation? He says, at this point, this was touched on today's panel. And in regards to the brief review, Web 3.0, like he says, is a keyword that has been frequently mentioned since, I guess, roughly 2017, 2018. Web 2.0 is the so-called SNS service, which enables interactive communication. However, even in a Web 2.0 world, right, a specific server authenticates a specific company, manages the information, and the rights to the information belong to the company. In Web 3.0, which is decentralized, should be at least, each user manages information in a decentralized manner. And the authentication is not done by a specific server or company, but by mutual authentication. And of course, here's some of the features, if you weren't aware of it. No loss of data. That right there in itself is what Jasmine is trying to not only accomplish through personal data lockers, but they got to have things be secure. Data is not tampered with, right? What's the point of having a personal data locker if you're going to have data that's going to be tampered with, right? Improve interconnectivity of information. Ownership of information belongs to the individual. And that's one of the main purposes and points of the PDL, and so on and so forth, right? All right, so what I want to get into is, some of these other things that are basically listed here. And basically, it's further down here. He states, right about here, okay? And that is, DeFi is another market that is expected to grow significantly in the future. Until now, loans have been subject to credit screening by financial institutions, but now AI-based screening is being adopted in many cases. Excuse me again. Automated execution of financial services based on transaction histories and other information may also become more prevalent. All right, just down here for a second, it says, here's an example. If a scheme is established to automatically refund a portion of the money received from customers in the form of digital assets to investors through a program, financial services based entirely on CF could also be realized. And in regards to CF, like it says, I didn't mean to skip that part. It says, in the past, credit screening by financial institutions was mainly based on balance sheets, and it was, and profit and loss statements, which is PL. But in the future, credit screening based on cash flow, right, CF, may become a reality. So I'm not going to get into all the rest of this, but what I want to also show you is, like it says, what currency will be used for payments in such metaverse society? This part actually is crucial. I don't want to skip over this real quick. So he says, in this context, there's a possibility that the way people communicate will change dramatically. In a metaverse society, language barriers will be eliminated if simultaneous interpretation functions are implemented, and avatars will enable, for example, people with disabilities to act the same way as normal people. What currency will be used for payment in such a metaverse society? Unfortunately, Japanese yen will not be the primary currency in the metaverse, nor will the US dollar, right? So what cryptocurrencies, for instance, will be used, or what forms of payment will be used in these metaverses. This is why in the past you saw that Jasmy did mention that they're going to have, position themselves for the future for a particular metaverse and so on. So it says, we believe that there is a high or very high possibility that crypto assets will be used here as a means of payment that can be utilized globally. Okay, so this part real quick. In such a metaverse, information management and information attribution will become more important. It will. Through this panel discussion, he was reminded that Jasmine is able to realize this point by utilizing blockchain technology. Okay, so what I want to show you guys now is a little demo, and then we're going to get into some of the profile of who this guy is and why he's such a key player, to say the least. Okay, so I'm going to play this real quick. And I'm going to pause it in some key areas. And I did get my audio fixed where I didn't have to do like a separate segment for some reason. That was a problem, but it's fixed now. So this guy back in, oh man, this was like 6 years ago. Let's see how long it was. So April 8th, 2017. He says, paying with Bitcoin at Bic Camera in Tokyo. Now, of course, this is not Jasmy, but the point is, I want you guys to understand why this is so significant. And if anything, the reason why this is so significant is because you will see how in Japan, the ease of access of paying for these things. Now, understand that this is, BTC at the time, used for, paying for some, in this case, I think it was a boy trying to buy a toy, right? His mother was buying a toy for him. I'm going to play this for you. And let's just get into this right now, because it's going to give you a broader perspective of if this particular individual, and let me just double check this real quick in regards to this. Let me get his name right. Genki Oda, right, was able to originally introduce Bitcoin, as in BTC, to the masses of Japan. What about when we really get that regulatory framework of data free flow with trust? What's going to happen when it comes to, okay, now is it time to introduce personal data lockers to people? Now, for people that don't understand Jasmy, they're going to say, Max, that's a stretch. It's not a stretch at all, because we understand that, especially when it comes to the metaverse, I don't know about you, but I don't want anybody messing with my personal information. Like, for instance, if I have a custom avatar and I went into a particular metaverse and I have all these things that I bought, right? That's my own personal stuff. Just like if you go on, you're playing your favorite video game, right? And you bought a bunch of downloadable content. That's your own personal downloadable content, right? You wouldn't want somebody like to have access to that at all. So it's not just the metaverse, but it's even like other things, So there will be the concept, especially going to Web3, and especially when it comes to Society 5.0, this concept of personal data lockers, right? So my key thing is, these people in Japan, they're going to see, especially with the adoption that's going to happen. You better believe it's going to happen. Just because we don't see widespread metaverse people using it yet, that will happen, and it's definitely going to start exploding in Japan. This concept that's being introduced in regards to data free flow with trust and so on, that regulatory framework where we get that clarity. So if Japan is already embracing this already ahead of the rest of the world, then that means these people that you're going to see here are also going to embrace the concept of having a personal data locker. And that, my friends, means, like I mentioned before, the utility being used. Watch this demo. Yes, it's in BTC, but it's going to give you a broader perspective of how easy the access was back then. And this guy, the CEO of BitPoint, was the one who originally introduced it to Japan. Again, like I mentioned, if he was able to introduce Bitcoin to Japan and be the first to do it, and he's well connected to Jasmy, come on. Just, we always connect the dots. That is big, and that is bullish, to say the least. Here we go.
Hey, I'm standing outside the big camera store in Yurakucho, Tokyo. this is one of the 2 stores in the city that started accepting Bitcoin for payments in store just yesterday. So I'm just going to check it out now and see how easy it is to actually pay with Bitcoin. Check it out. So Big Camera is mainly known as an electronics store, but they actually sell all kinds of stuff there. I don't need anything here today, so I brought along a volunteer. This is Tatsu. Hey Tatsu.
Hello.
All right, let's go. All right, this is the toy section, so I think we might have found what we're looking for. This is the cashier line, and I just noticed here that register number 6 has a Bitcoin sign on it, so hopefully that gets...
Excuse me. So the reason why I wanted to pause it and, I didn't come out of the frame and so on is because I want to share with you guys my thoughts on some of this, okay? We can agree to disagree, and it's fine. But the key thing is this, right? Here briefly, in certain areas of I live in the Phoenix area. I saw, for instance, Bitcoin accepted at Subway many, many years ago. I don't know if it still is. And as we know, with updated technology, right, there's a lot better forms of payment than Bitcoin. I mean, it's pretty darn slow to say the least. But, you got to keep in mind about 7 years ago, this was a thing. But the key thing is walking in here, you're going to see example like what you're about to see right here, Bitcoin accepted, as a form of payment. Let's watch her basically pay for it and so on. It doesn't take super long, but it's the access, okay? So again, just try to picture some of these things of like the future, especially when it comes to Jasmine, because my attitude is, the concept of Web3. So I want you to picture something, and I know some people say, like, man, you're a dreamer. Well, so what? At the end of the day, like, we all have hopes and dreams, but my key thing is this. Imagine a different scenario where these people in Japan are walking into, for instance, whether it's this toy store or some other place and so on, and they're not necessarily buying their kid a toy. It could be anything and everything. But what if it's, like how we go into a grocery store, how, especially here in the United States, I realize a lot of you guys watch from other overseas and so on. That's awesome. Thank you for that. But you go into a grocery store or any store and you see a section where it just has gift cards like lined up like crazy. Imagine you go up to that rack of gift cards, okay? And it mentions, for instance, it just says like Meta, like for instance with Facebook. We understand there's multiple other, metaverse platforms, right? And then you grab the gift card, but instead of it being a gift card, it says something for like, metaverse or something like that, right? And then next to that, for instance, it says Jasmy PDL, all right? Or it might be on the same thing for the metaverse. You grab it, you go up to the check stand right here, and the lady says, all right, you're wanting to purchase, like a certain amount of, I guess you could say tokens or whatever, to be used, for instance, or you need to have a personal data locker, right? My point is, like, we understand that your data can be used, right, for monetization purposes. At the same time, I imagine that you would need to have a personal data locker, right? Jasmy's utility, for you can have your data protected in various different metaverse platforms. And it just doesn't even, that's just like the start of it, right? So again, picture some of this. It's many years ago, but let's watch a little bit more in regards to this. All right, so just real quick, like, oh, you're paying with Bitcoin, or how may I help you, right? So it's like, yeah, I would like to, I need to get a personal data locker and so on. It just, I mean, I know it seems like maybe some people feel as though it's far-fetched, but really is it? Just because that reality is not right now yet doesn't mean that it's not going to be a reality. If you would think about like back in 2009 or 2010, the concept of, Bitcoin being used at some of these places, some people would have maybe laughed in your face, right? That's the reality. But the point is, all these things have become a reality. Even when it comes, how about this for Stellar, right? We understand with MoneyGram, you're using Stellar Lumens, for instance, right? So is all this stuff really far-fetched? No, I don't think so. Let's play a little bit more. I mean, in regards to this, I mean, that wasn't like super long, but in reality, like if you had a, Christmas season, especially if you had a lot of customers, that could be a problem, right? So, imagine, obviously I'm a big fan of Ripple's XRP. The way I look at, boom, instant payment done within 3 seconds, right? That's reality. But here's an example. She did pay for the item in BTC. Now, of course, she probably could have never known that it was going to, blast off to 69K at one point. I'm going to play a little bit more into this. I'm going to make a point that's going to really pound it home that much more in regards to some of these concepts. Here we go.
That worked pretty well. There you go. Here we have the receipt, and you can see it says here, paid in Bitcoin. And they also give you this little note when you pay it, saying that if you return anything that you bought with Bitcoin, they're going to pay you back in Japanese yen.
All right, now here's the point I want to make. Here's some of the clarification, or the concepts I want to bring to you guys. Just double check this so I don't want to be muted. So the receipt, right, shows it's paid in Bitcoin. Shows that you can, if you have to return it, it will be refunded in Japanese yen. Now, understand this, that before 2018 and so on, or before COVID, I should say, it was reported originally, like I mentioned before, that back in 2018, Japan was probably one of the top countries that was a pro-cash society. Since COVID, they are becoming a cashless society, right? Very, gone digital, to a sense. So the way I want you guys to picture this, and again, this is a concept, we could agree to disagree, but I don't think I'm too far off on this concept. So in the future, especially with Web3 and really getting the ball rolling with the adoption, well past the time of DFFT and so on, you have, whether it's this lady or somebody else, they go into some of the stores. You don't necessarily have to go in the store. I mean, in reality, you could just do it online, right? But let's just say they're old school. They go to a store. They want that convenience. hi, are you paying in a Jasmy or whatever the case? Yes, I would like to get a personal data locker. Okay, sure, no problem. So on the receipt, it shows that it was paid for Jasmy for a personal data locker. Hear me out, and it prints out this thing, or whether it might not even they might not even do receipts anymore at this point, right? It might just be like, oh, we'll just send it to your phone, right? Because obviously that would more, that would make sense, right? So anyway, whatever the case be, she or he gets the receipt, excuse me, to the phone or whatever they're using, and it says instead of being refunded in Japanese yen, listen to this guy because we're going away from the whole concept of cash. The refund is in what? The DD coin, data democratization coin. That would simply make sense, would it not? And of course, we've been following the whole thing of DD. So I wanted to give you guys some of these visualizations to make it, to have it make more sense to you guys. So I'm going to take this off, and I want to jump into a little bit more about the profile of Genki Oda, okay? And why it's so important to pay attention to, in my opinion, who he is. So in the past, not that long ago, we did Getty images for, Mr. Kunitake Ando. Showed you some of this. So, it says BitPoint Japan Co. President Genki Oda interview. I really apologize. My allergies are kicking my butt. But it says Genki Oda, president of BitPoint Japan Co., speaks during an interview in Tokyo, Japan on Thursday, May 15, 2017. BitPoint Japan, the company behind Peach Aviation Limited, moved to let travelers, like I mentioned before, remember I said pay attention to some of this, to let travelers use Bitcoin to pay for tickets. Is planning to give hundreds of thousands of Japanese retail outlets the ability to accept the digital currency. If this guy was able to do some of these big things with Bitcoin, and he's well connected to Jasmy because of BitPoint, can you imagine what's going to happen here with the adoption, the mass adoption when it comes to crypto in general, but especially when it comes to Jasmy, because he is directly connected to Jasmy through BitPoint. And not only that, when we talk about the regulatory framework, this guy is part of the, the regulatory board, as we showed earlier. In regards to all this, and that is really, really, really big. I want to show you guys another thing, and here's an example. It says Bitcoin soars in value. It says an employee demonstrates the usage of Bitcoin automated teller machine ATM at the BitPoint, right? BitPoint Japan Co. headquarters in Tokyo, Japan, Thursday, May 25th, 2017. Bitcoin is showing no signs of slowing down. Well, in reality, the technology is definitely slowing down. It's like dinosaur technology as far as, compared to other blockchains, DLT, and so on. So anyway, it says the price of the largest cryptocurrency by market value is soaring. It did. Let's face it. I mean, come on, from 2017 to, 2021, 2021, the thing blasted off, to say the least, right? All the way to 69K? Yeah, 69K. Unbelievable. So it says, gains greater mainstream attention, despite warnings of a bubble and what not everyone agrees is an asset. Our editors select the best archive, right, in regards to that. But here's an example. And that example is, look at the logo, and it's, you saw the logo on the thumbnail, right? It says BP, as in BitPoint. Now, if BitPoint has this access, which we have confirmed, they have this access all over the place in Japan. And this guy is well connected to Jasmy. Here's a perfect representation. And now some of the flutters are going to say, well, that's Bitcoin, Max. Okay, understand again how well connected this guy is and how literally he went out of his way to specifically mention Jasmy by name numerous times and was impressed with Kunitake Ando, Mr. Sato, and so on, right? That is so darn big and so bullish in itself. When I find these findings, I just go crazy with it. And this is why, I don't know if you guys have been noticed, I've been trying to get more and more Jasmy content. I really feel as though Jasmy is the one. I saw a guy in the comment, he basically said, something like somebody responded like, Jasmy is the one. He's like, yeah, Jasmy is the one because you hold it. It's like, come on, man. Jasmy is the one because you want to know something? While the rest of the world is trying to get it figured out when it comes to regulatory clarity and so on, like I mentioned numerous times, do you know of any other country that has embraced crypto like Japan is right now and is literally getting you or the rest of the world that regulatory framework into place? I don't know of any. Japan definitely stands out. All right, I want to show you another picture. Here it is again. I think it's worded the same way. But yeah, I mean, it basically says an employee demonstrates the usage of a Bitcoin automated teller machine, ATM, at the BitPoint Japan Co. Right? And it, like it says, you know, lets travelers use Bitcoin to pay for tickets. Well, how about this? People, you know, oh man, I got to get back into the metaverse world, my virtual world, you know, the Matrix or whatever you want to refer to it as, right? To each his own. I got to get back in there. My physical world sucks. I don't know. I don't completely agree with that, but for some people, that's the thing, you know? My physical world sucks. I got to get back in there. BitPoint has these machines where you can simply, you know, load up your own personal data, or maybe it's not even in the form of machines anymore. It's just like you can go online and it's all done. But the point is, BitPoint, you better believe in the future, will give the access. That in itself is crucial because we understand that these digital assets that we are invested into are just what? They are, basically speaking, the utility-driven tokens or coins. We want to see those assets use the utility, because that utility is what will really, really get the thing going. If your crypto is constantly using utility, it's going to do something. Perfect example is Ethereum. Oh, Max, you shouldn't compare this to, you know, Ethereum. Well, understand this. I don't like Ethereum personally, but I also understand the concept of gas fees. Ethereum constantly uses gas fees for numerous things, NFTs, you name it. And as a result of that utility of the gas fee, like Mark Cuban mentioned in the past, being used over and over and over again, that's the utility being used. How about Jasmine's personal data locker, right? That utility of storing that data in these lockers over and over and over again, whether it is for the metaverse or whatever else that you're using it for Society 5.0, you name it. Paying for who knows what. One little more thing, just to pound it home on the background of this guy, because you got to pay attention to this. So this is from Market Screener, Business Leaders. Genki Oda, age 42, like it says. Link companies, Remix Point. And I've blown this up more for you guys. Summary. Genki Oda is on the board of BitPoint Japan Co. Limited, former chairman, and Japan Virtual, listen to this, and Crypto Assets Exchange Association, and president and CEO and representative director at Remix Point Inc. Mr. Oda received a graduate degree from the University of Tokyo, which means he has at least an MBA like myself. You know, like he doesn't have undergraduate, bachelor's. There's nothing wrong with, you know, having undergraduate degrees and so on. But yeah, that tells me he has at least an MBA. Okay, so the guy, he's put in his time and so on. I'm not saying that you have to have a college degree to be somebody, but I you know, I want to see that some of these guys are, you know, they have an impressive background. So check this out, just real quick. Current positions, as we know, Remix Point Inc. Electric Utilities. Ooh, president CEO of that since 2019. BitPoint, representative director. I don't know how far back that dates, but anyway, BitPoint Holdings since 2020. Japan Virtual and Crypto Assets Exchange Association, vice chairman from 2021. The holdings of Genki Oda in regards to Remix Point, and it comes out to be a valuation of a little over 2.2 million, right? And it's impressive, right, to see some of like the things that's even linked to the backgrounds. But I don't know, I just thought I would share that with you guys. And if anything, the main key takeaway is, again, like what you saw here, and there it is, boom, you know, Jasmy, and especially this up here. Let me pull it up again. Yeah, first in Japan, BitPoint listed Jasmy from October 26, 2021. And again, guys, this is the whole reason, the whole concept of why Jasmy is labeled the Bitcoin of Japan. So I'm so impressed when I find out more of the information. This is why I take the deeper dives to some of these guys, right? Because the way I look at, like, this guy's the CEO of BitPoint. He originally first introduced Bitcoin as a BTC to Japan, and he's well connected with Jasmy, partnered up with them and so on through BitPoint. That's big in itself. There's going to come a period here soon, not necessarily tomorrow, right? But understand, I want to accumulate these digital assets in the accumulation phase to prepare for this long-term hold of Jasmy, because I definitely see where it's going, and I definitely also understand where Jasmy butters are going when it comes to their research, and it basically is not much research. They just take what's on the surface and they flood the project to death. Are they doing that for their own personal reasons, or they just hate Jasmy for whatever reason? It makes you wonder, especially when it comes to some people who consistently flood it out of the blue, or always commenting and flooding it and flooding it and flooding it. Are they flooding it because they want to short Jasmy for their own personal gains? Again, you gotta look at the bigger perspective. But there's finally the answer, guys, of why Jasmy is the Bitcoin of Japan. So with that said, like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you want to keep yourself informed consistently with Jasmy updates, by all means, make sure you are subscribed and hit that bell notification for consistent Jasmy updates from us here at Crypto Talk Now. On behalf of myself, Larry, and the rest of the CTN Network team, take a look at our live show if you can, or if you want, every single day at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific for Crypto Talk Now. Have a blessed day, everybody. Know what you hold. Know why you hold it. The research always trumps FUD 110%. Over and out.